Political season is officially underway. The Missouri primary is on Tuesday, and we are joined by the 55th governor of the great state of Missouri, the man who knows a little something about getting votes, more votes than anybody else in the history of the state, and the pride of Jeff County, Jay Nixon. Welcome back to the show.
Absolutely, Scott. It's great to be back.
So people are going to start voting in 2 days. You came out early in this race and talked about Mike Bloomberg. That is over. I had to think, whenever I read that quote about farming is easy, I thought, oh, Jay Nixon has to be like face palm. His phone starts vibrating. It's Barry Aycock saying what's going on. But now that that's over, who are you voting for on Tuesday?
Biden. I think Joe has coalesced folks properly. I've always been a supporter, friend of his. I just thought that Mayor Bloomberg brought a unique set of opportunities here for us to operate in a little more nonpartisan way in D.C. Things are so clogged up right now. Yeah. And it was just distasteful to me that folks like Bernie were attacking him for using money when their campaigns are based on spending your money.
Yeah. Well, it's also true. I mean, there was a time where Biden was really struggling, and Bloomberg looked like it may be where it's now. It's Biden versus Sanders. It looked like it was going to be Sanders and Bloomberg just because he had the money to stay in the longest.
Yeah, it could have come out a lot of ways. I think. Obviously, Vice President Biden's campaign came together. Obviously, they're in a good situation now, and I think that the next 2 weeks are going to finish off this primary in a significant way.
Missouri is an interesting state. You have a large section, a lot of it in St. Louis, but there's an element in Kansas City too, of really progressive. The word socialist to them is totally fine. Then you have St. Genevieve County Republican or Democrats that if you say the word socialist, they get bowled up and mad. How do you harness those two together? Because I think that's a microcosm, maybe the country for the Democrat Party. How do you get those same people excited about the same message?
Well, Biden's a vessel that can do it. He's a working class guy from Scranton. He's got a great history. He's had a progressive record, but he hasn't forgotten where he's from. I think he can. The only question about Joe is whether he can hold that coalition together and move forward. But he's the candidate that's designed to hold that coalition together. I also think it's interesting how, especially in states like Missouri, there's so much swing at the relatively low, poor rural area between Trump and then a left candidate. I remember canoeing down south right after the last election. I said, who'd your people vote for? And the guy who was helping me said, my brother voted for Trump and my sister voted for Bernie. So I think that there's message out there for people that are really hurting on both sides, and the candidates who go after those people are going to see some success in 2020.
Obama carried Iron County.
Yes, he did.
Now, in Iron County today, Donald Trump's pretty popular. That's an interesting swing of people, and you don't got a lot of rich folks in Iron County.
No, I think it's going to be a very interesting election. I think Missouri is going to be a lot more interesting than some of the pundits want to say, just putting us in the red column and forgetting about us. I think Missouri maintains a real independent streak that you're going to see play out over the next 7-8 months.
Honestly, I don't know that it does anymore. I used to believe that. I think that we exhibited that. I think for somehow kind of when people went to read the news on their phone or somehow around the Tea Party era, I've seen Missouri be less and less that show me bellwether independent streak, and I think it'd be much better for the state if it came back.
Yeah, I think one of the things is the nationalization of news, and that's why shows like yours are so important, where you communicate directly to people about real issues, where you were actually in Jeff City this week and talk to real people and communicate that. I think that we saw in Super Tuesday where Biden was able to win dramatically in states he didn't spend a dime in, that he hadn't even been to in 2 or 3 months, that the nationalization of news has distanced people from what's going on in government and has distanced them from the control of their democracy. I think that's also one of the things that's causing the problems.
I don't think there's any scenario by where Missouri benefits from the nationalization of news. I think we're going to be the primary folks that might be competitive, but in a nationalization of news section, we're going to be the first people left behind.
I'm not going to be a Dodger or Yankee fan. And that's who the news goes to. You saw it when they did the PBS series, Ken Bernstein thing on baseball. I felt like we were dealing with American League East Coast. I mean, they kind of forgot us. We're like we're real baseball here, and obviously have a record. And you get that kind of sense. And then with the feeling the need to go to the left coast, they go that too. And flyover country becomes media flyover country.
I think we not only get to observe it, we live it. Whenever I got to do an interview with you we did a series of interviews about your career, there was the one thing I walked out of that interview thinking, and really I've seen it applied, and you talked about the value of work. You said when Democrats talk about the value of work and rewarding that properly and honestly, they do well. When they talk about helping people, maybe that's not a message that always resonates as much as helping people through giving them chances and opportunities to work. I wonder in the modern Democrat Party, that message seems to be veering off to the left from that message, and I'm not sure in Missouri, that's a case you can really make if you don't stick to that core principle of the value of work.
There's a difference between being the party of work and the party of entitlement.
Yeah.
You can be generous, you can be helpful, but unless you value work, the thing that's made this country and made this state great, you're never going to have a successful political campaign. You also in Missouri need to understand that people need to respect your values. You need to go to them. When I say work in a political sense, I mean getting out there, seeing the state, meeting people, talking to them, listening to them, and working with them for a number of years before you get their trust. This is a show me state. The first time you meet somebody, they're always a little skeptical, and the second time they're wondering what the heck you're doing coming back. By the third or fourth time you meet with them, they're willing to sit down and talk. You know that. You're traveled the state a lot. And the bottom line is the same is true in politics. Hard work gets you there, but you're there for the people that are working hard.
So let's. There's a couple people I want to ask you about why you're here.
Sure.
They kind of come out of your legacy as governor that you really helped. One was Nicole Galloway. You appointed her to one of the highest positions in state government, and I think her performance has probably made that decision look pretty good. Now she's running for the last Democrat to hold that office was you. She's running for governor. When you give her some advice, how do you advise her on how to win this race? I mean, she starts off as the underdog. How do you catch a Republican in this state and pass them and beat them?
Well, you have to tell people what you want to do, what your vision is for the state. And I think comparing those visions is what the new politics is about, not just the snippy attacks that each side shows. I think Missourians want to know, especially for a new candidate for governor, what makes her tick and what things are really important. When she wakes up in the morning, what does she want to do? When she goes to bed at night, what does she want to do to make Missouri better? And I think that once that gap is closed, then this race gets extremely interesting.
Her style's interesting to me. It's more like you watch Joe Biden do gaffes. That's the one thing that you are not known for is gaffes. You're one of the most tightly held. Maybe it comes from being a lawyer, but I never seen you in press conferences or on speeches just go on a gaffe fest. I'm sure you said things here and there, but for the most part, pretty tightly controlled. That's what she is. I watched Claire McCaskill. She can throw a partisan jab, and it seems very natural. Nicole Galloway, not so, it doesn't come as naturally to her. I watch her do those things. And to me, the new politics may be partisan jabs. She seems a lot more, I want to accomplish this, is how I'm going to do it. Can she stick to that, though, in a new age with Donald Trump tweeting all the time?
I mean, the real question is whether we're going to turn politics over to the way Washington is operating, or whether we're going to return politics to the way the independent federalist states operated, where you spoke from your states and then that voice was added to the country. Right now, both news and politics are being run by about 6 people and about 20 Twitter accounts and a 202 area code, and a lot of everybody else is reacting to it. The bottom line is I believe that this is a pathway to the future. I believe local communication, I'd be direct communications, more Tip O'Neill, all politics is local, is where you're going to find some ability to break through. The national media didn't break it through for Joe Biden. It was Jim Clyburn and people working on the ground in South Carolina that got that done. Real people that went out and voted.
African Americans in South Carolina, if Joe Biden goes on to win the presidency, they probably deserve a lot of credit for that, because I think there was a momentum break that maybe nobody could have stopped, but African American voters in South Carolina stepped in and said, we're for Biden, and that looks like it had been the linchpin to turn some things around.
Well, and that message shift, Scott, if you watch it real subtly, it was that we're the primary constituent of the Democratic Party. We've been the most loyal for the long time. Our voice needs to be heard clearly. That was a message 2 ways. That was a message to everybody else in politics, but it was also a message to the many fine African Americans that have been involved for years, saying it's time for our voice to be heard. And I think that duality of that message was powerful and will continue to drive Joe Biden.
Well, the way it's set up right now, you go Iowa, New Hampshire. You're a person whose, I think, picture still hangs up in the Scotland County Courthouse right on the Iowa line. Iowa had a pretty bad debacle. Do you think some of these, you start putting these data points together, the diversity of the Democratic Party they talk about, South Carolina maybe moving the nomination process, the fact they couldn't count the votes for a week, is that still the right place to start this?
No. Never was. But the other 2 things that I think have been not covered by the national press about this whole thing is, one is the reason Iowa and ultimately Nevada had problems is because the Bernie folks came in after 2016 and changed the rules and made you report all these 3 different categories and line them up because they wanted to try to figure out how to get a win. The second most underreported story is Elizabeth Warren going around the country for so many months and not years and bashing billionaires and special interest money, but when the going got tough, she formed a super PAC and took billionaires' money. I mean, well, how you can go through an entire debate at CBS and that question not be asked while allowing her have a free reign to harass anybody she wants to on stage is of no, I just don't understand it.
Let me ask you something that I think a lot of people, you came in and helped Senator Rizzo when he was running. He was a legislator, contested primary. He's now the minority floor leader. I think he's won high praise from liberals, conservatives, Republicans, Democrats, people in the bureaucracy, even House members. As he moves forward, that's a chamber you know a little bit something about. Give a piece of advice for John Rizzo as he steps into his new role.
Well, first of all, I'm excited for him, and especially the smooth transition between he and Gina, who's a deep friend. I know we may talk about Gina, but I have a deep, deep level of respect and friendship for her. And I think JJ can continue in that mode. And I think with term limits, it's nice to bring these younger folks up sooner so they can get a little more seasoned. That's why I think this move is so important. It's not just the last 2 years he's there or the last year to finish out a term for Gina. This is a young person that's going to run for re-election, that can serve in that position for a while and bring continued stability to the Missouri Senate. As you know, I always got in trouble for saying it, but the House makes the news and the Senate makes the laws, and I think
never more so than today.
It's really important to bring the various. It's the one place in Missouri government where any of the 34 members can stand up and say, "I've got an amendment" or "I've got an objection," and talk and add to the debate. And I think that the thing I would tell the JJ is to try to get some of his members to become experts issue-wise in certain areas, so that you have specific point people to deal with the tough issues, so that the compromises you can earn are ones that help move the state forward, not just from a political way, but more important for people on Main Street and at home.
I think the number one institution that's the most important. Talk about that Midwestern skepticism. We wade in, we don't dive in, we move slowly. The number one institution that's kept our state from getting wrapped up in trends either way is that Missouri Senate, and it is an amazing amount of trust the state puts in that to kind of hold the line and make sure, is this really a good idea?
It's the one place in politics where a handshake means something still.
Talk about Gina Walsh, somebody you know very well.
Gina, I'm just so proud of Gina for all of her years of service. And when people talk about how to bring the various coalitions of the Democratic Party together, she has served in a majority-minority district as a representative and senator in Jeff City for a lot of years. That's a perfect example of a person that does her local politics, takes her message broader, her words are bond, and she's a lot of fun to be around.
That is a fact. I've got to enjoy that, and I've even got scolded by that. But even when I left, I thought, well, I like her. That wasn't that bad.
She added to my vocabulary, not my circus, not my monkey. That's very useful in the practice of law.
You, when you were governor, probably did more for state parks than anybody in my career ever. I got my pin that I was down in Merrimack a couple months ago. Where have you got a chance to go in the last year since you've been back on the show?
We're heading down to Echo Bluff to do a spring flower look. My wife is real involved in flowers, so we're going to be kayaking, and I'll do a little fishing, I think, on that trophy trout area below Montauk there, too. March 1st came with me out me getting out, but it won't be very much longer till we're down in those Ozark streams yet again.
I heard your name when I was in Caldwell County at Hamilton. They started, I guess when you were there, started a butterfly trail that they're trying to run down. Who would have thought one of the largest monarch butterfly migration patterns is from Caldwell County down to Greene County in Missouri. Interesting things how you go around the state and you say, well, yeah, we worked on that one time. We helped get that started. That's an interesting legacy. If you're going to give folks, as they get ready this summer and they get a 3-day weekend somewhere, give somebody from, let's just talk about a good car, Gene Oakley. Where would you send Gene Oakley this summer?
Well, I'd head him west a little bit. Yeah. Once they open up that new Bryant Creek State Park, it's hard to get to down near Marshfield. They've indicated it's the next one that's going to be opened. It's a wonderful piece of property, and that stream going through those valleys there is one of the most beautiful places you can possibly see. Plus, around Easter, everybody should go to Faughn State Park. Those lilies that grow up wild out by Pickle Springs are an unbelievable sight to see, and please don't dig any up. Just look at them.
Governor, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
We'll be right back. We're going to have Ambassador O'Malley and Representative Rasheen Aldridge talking about the Democrat primary Tuesday. But first, go to showingmissouri.com. Learn about the history of Miller County this week. We went down and talked to Rocky Miller and Commissioner Wright. Had a great time in one of the most historic counties. Did a little digging around there a couple decades ago. We'll be right back after this.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads, because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations, and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association.
Mike Parson served in law enforcement for 22 years. A former sheriff, Parson is tough on crime. Governor Parson is standing up for victims, investing in better mental health services, and cracking down on violent crime and drugs. Governor Parson's anti-crime initiatives have led to the arrests of hundreds of violent criminals and gang members. A former sheriff, a conservative, tough-on-crime governor. Mike Parson is making Missouri families safer.
Your energy needs are changing. That's why at Ameren, Missouri, we're not waiting on the future. We're building it with the Smart Energy Plan, advancing thousands of projects across the state, helping reduce emissions through cleaner energy sources, boost reliability with self-healing equipment, and better withstand storms with new composite poles. Moving Missouri forward and bringing us all a little closer together. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to Week in Missouri Politics. We are joined by two folks from both sides of the campaigns that you have to choose from on Tuesday. Former Ambassador Kevin O'Malley from here in St. Louis, correct?
Yes, sir.
Very glad to have you, sir.
Nice to be here.
Representative Rasheen Aldridge that represents the city of St. Louis and spent the weekend in me and Jeff City. Welcome back, sir.
Glad to be back.
So, Sanders supporter.
Yes, sir.
Give me the pitch as to why you support Bernie Sanders to be the president of the United States.
Yeah, I believe that Bernie should be the next president of the United States because he's a candidate that actually cares about working people. He doesn't just talk the talk, but he walks the walk. When it comes to issues that are very passionate to me, such as livable wages, making sure people have Medicaid, some type of health insurance, knowing that, especially here in the state of Missouri, we won't even expand Medicaid, making sure that people have the ability to have a quality education. He cares about working people. And where we currently are right now, you have working people struggling every day trying to figure out if they're going to be able to pay their bills on time, where they're going to send their child to get a quality education, if they're going to have some type of health care and got scared to be able to go to the doctor. So you have a candidate that really cares about the very low-level people, not the top, but he cares about the bottom down. And this is a candidate that I think has resonated with a lot of people because he's so genuine in his approach where he's coming from to make sure that working people in this state, no matter what state you live in, will be able to have a voice at the table.
There's a genuineness to him that does come through.
Yes, sir.
That those are his opinions, they're deeply held beliefs, and he's real about it.
Yeah, I mean, some people call him radical, some people say he yells too much, but it comes from a spot in his heart that he genuinely cares about making sure that people that haven't had actually be able to have a little bit better quality of living that they currently have right now.
Ambassador O'Malley, you've known many national and, of course, state politicians throughout the years. How did you select Joe Biden as the person you want to support for president?
So I happen to know him very well, probably better than I know any of the other political figures. Vice President Biden was very interested in Irish issues while I was resident in Ireland as its ambassador. He came to Ireland, spent a week with us, had never been to Ireland as a tourist before, lived with us at the ambassador's mansion. And we went out and did all the speeches and all the touristy things.
Family Irish?
He has Irish roots.
He probably got the McKenna's vote in Jeff County with that right there.
We're looking for more on Monday, but on Tuesday rather. But he is the most decent man I know in American politics. What you see is what you get. I mean, we would have breakfast every day together at the ambassador's house, and then we would go off and do our things, do the speeches or do the touristy things. And there simply is no public Joe Biden or private Joe Biden. There's just Joe Biden. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and what you see is what you get. People say that about him, and I can testify that that is absolutely the truth. He's a fellow who has never forgotten where he came from. He came from middle-class roots. He worked his way up. He went into the government, never made any money while he was in the government, was always working for working families, and has a record of getting things done in the United States Senate. From the assault weapons ban to the Violence Against Women's Act to the Affordable Care Act, I mean, he has a record of being able to work with other progressive Democrats with conservative Republicans and getting things done.
He seems like a kind man.
Well, he is a kind man. I mean, he has not forgotten where he came from, and he knows what it's like to be behind. He knows what it's like to run into adversity, and he doesn't hide that. I mean, he's very much empathetic to what people need, and he understands that this country is being torn apart by the toxic nature of our political discourse right now. And actually, we don't even have discourse. We just have screaming matches.
140 character debates, right?
It's outrageous, and it's got to stop. And I believe that Joe Biden is the person to help us stop. And if I can do one more thing on the pitch, it's clear from almost all of the polls and from what we've seen in the last couple of days that on all the down ballot issues and the down ballot candidates, people running for Senate, people running for the House, people running for the State House, that Vice President Biden will be the person that can most help them on the Democratic Party gain or retain their seats.
Speaking to that, Representative, let's ask to me the question about Bernie Sanders, and I come from always have been a Republican, but when you look at the issues that frankly a lot of your Democrats raise, how does Bernie Sanders take a message that excites people in your district, that excites a large number, Alderwoman Megan Green, a large group of people, but can you take that message and expand that and win a state like Missouri that Barack Obama won but hasn't been competitive since?
Absolutely. I think when you look at, sometimes I think we downplay our voters in believing that they don't want the things that Senator Sanders are talking about. Even when you look at recent ballot initiative, if it's been Prop B or if it's medical marijuana, you see not just in St. Louis and Kansas City, but all across the state. In some of these rural areas, they overwhelmingly voted for it, even clean Missouri. So the same issues that we've seen voters go to the polls for and vote in favor of that are the same thing that Bernie Sanders have been talking about, making sure people have a livable wage, making sure people have a voice in their government. So this notion that, and I've been hearing it a lot, that if we elect Senator Sanders or he gets a nominee, he will hurt people down ballot. And I don't think that's true. I think you have a lot of people down ballot that will also get excited in the message. And what he's talking about are democratic principles that Democrats care about no matter where you come from. They care about making sure that they have a quality of life, and that is Bernie Sanders' message. So, like I said, we've seen it in this state, and we've seen it in other states as well. So it's very possible that once Bernie Sanders become the Democratic nominee, that all the candidates down ballot would also win.
I've always said this on the show. You could take Joe Biden to the Washington County State Fair in Potosi, and every Democrat would show up. I'm not sure they would have shown up for some of the other candidates there. Jefferson County, a place Democrats used to win and do very well, it used to be a swing place. Joe Biden probably plays well. The question I have for you is, how does Joe Biden go and excite those really progressive, even folks who the word socialist isn't a bad word. How do you get folks predominantly younger in the cities excited about Joe Biden?
Well, we know that from all of the endorsements that the Vice President has obtained from the political, from the people involved in the Democratic Party, they want Vice President Biden to be the candidate because they understand this down ballot strength that he has that others don't have. The message for us is more difficult because it's not as exciting to say, we need to return to normal. We need to get back to where we used to be. And that's part of what our message is. We're not revolutionary. We don't want to denigrate the way Trump has. We are in the middle of the country, and I think that's where most people are. And so our message, you can see the excitement that's occurred in the last 5 days, or now last week, where our campaign has become recognized as perhaps the best way to attack the toxicity that's in our government right now.
Representative, let me ask you. This primary ends, Joe Biden's the nominee for Democrats. Can you and people that have taken up common cause with you in supporting Senator Sanders, can you support Joe Biden in November?
Absolutely. I mean, there's too much at risk in November to be dividing, especially in a party where we're a party that's trying to uplift everybody. I mean, I don't agree and believe that Joe Biden would be a better president than Bernie Sanders, but people in my district, the senior citizens in my district, the folks that live in Carr Square and live in Ben Park can't afford 4 more years of Donald Trump. So whoever walks out of this as a nominee, I'm going to make sure I do the same thing I did in 2016. Once Bernie Sanders lost, I got right behind Hillary Clinton because...
Why should you do that?
Because the mission was making sure that we get somebody in the office that's going to represent not just one section of this United States, but represent the whole United States.
By the same token, you talk about Bernie Sanders can be a little divisive. Bernie Sanders accepts the word socialist as not a negative thing. Can Joe Biden and folks like yourself turn around and support Bernie Sanders in November?
Absolutely, because we will unite against the toxic policies of Donald Trump. We have to do that. We have differences with Senator Sanders. Clearly we do, both in style and in substance. But the moment that our nominee is selected, I know from the Biden side of this, we will be, if Vice President Biden is the nominee, we will be reaching out to the Sanders people to try to find, what can we do to get them involved and to get them excited about what we're doing.
Is it just at the end of the day, you both have Donald Trump, and a lot of times, and when a president runs for re-election, you have the uniting force of Donald Trump to pull you together.
I think a president like Trump has been able to divide us so much, regardless who the candidate is.
It unites Democrats.
It unites Democrats.
Yeah. That ends up being the case?
Yeah, but I think it's more than that. What Senator Biden and Vice President Biden and Senator Sanders have more areas of commonality than they do of differences.
Sure.
We do have some sharp differences. There's no doubt about that. We are much more moderate. We're progressive, but more moderate than the Sanders campaign. But there's more that unites us than divides us. And clearly Trump is the outside force that will help us to unite. But mostly we are together on many, many issues. And we will be doing the reaching out if we can.
Speaking of Trump won this state by a near historic margin. He, I believe, pulled Josh Hawley across for the U.S. Senate race. Yeah. Polls show him still wildly popular for an incumbent president of Missouri. What is an issue that Missourians should think about with Trump that would maybe make them adjust their views and be open to a new candidate?
This Tuesday, when people go to the polls to vote, and not just this Tuesday, all the way to the November general election, I think there's very key issues that people should think about. Trump has been able to not just hurt working people that are on the Democratic side, but with his tiffs or with his ways that he's been able to also hurt farmers and been able to make sure that their voices have kind of been shut out too, and their profits have been lost due to all the taxes and stuff that he's been doing. It's very clear we need somebody who's going to be in office, like I say once again, that's not just trying to think about himself, but think about the whole United States. And I think about the working people in the Midwest of Missouri as well.
Ambassador, with our last little bit of time, what is the issue that might make Missourians look for a different president?
So Donald Trump's policies have made the United States a much more dangerous place to be in. Because of his erratic foreign policy and because of his erratic economic policies, we are becoming a weaker nation rather than a stronger nation. Countries like Russia can never, ever, ever surpass us in our creativity, in our economic strength, and our military strength. But they can tear us down. And that's what President Trump has allowed them to do. By being so divisive in our country, by having erratic trade policies which hurt our farmers, by supporting an attorney general who's really actually threatening our rule of law, he's made us a weaker country. And I think Missourians realize that. We want to have a safe place to live in where we can talk to one another, compromise, make sense of one another, and he's made that impossible.
Well, thank both of you for coming here and talking about these issues with us this day on This Week in Missouri Politics.
Thanks for having me.
Remember, Tuesday is the election, the Democrat primary. Go out and vote, and then go to MissouriTimes.com Tuesday night for the results, and we will see you next week on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics, sponsored by the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, SPIRE, and Sterling Bank.